OCs are an inevitability in just about any fandom. When you get engaged enough in a fictional world or setting, the compulsion to imagine your own character or characters within that setting is difficult to ignore. However, when an OC is thrown out into the broader fandom for people to admire or criticize, one can never be certain just how well they'll be received. Many OCs tend to be criticized for being uninspired or blatant wish fulfillment. But every so often, someone's original character will strike a chord within the fandom to the point of becoming borderline mainstream. This is the tale of one such character. Tumblr is a site with a rather infamous reputation these days. It's often regarded as the gathering place for many queer and or neurodivergent individuals. And to an extent, it always kind of has been, I suppose. However, the site has also long been host to a role-playing community that, while not as active as it once was, still continues to this day. For those unaware, it's actually rather common to find blogs on Tumblr dedicated to role-playing as a character or characters. One only need make a blog centered around the character, or muse of choice, and one can engage in what are basically collaborative fanfictions with other such blogs. While there are sites actually made explicitly for role-playing that arguably yield better results, Tumblr's reblog format allows for long-term threads that can stretch for days, weeks, or even months on end. Moreover, one can freely answer questions in character to better flesh out one's own personal view of the muse that they're role-playing. But why am I telling you all of this, you may ask? Because this is how a certain Yordle OC rose to prominence. Rinidinger, otherwise known as Rin, first made her debut on one such role-playing blog on March 30th, 2011. She was introduced as the student of Heimerdinger, well before the Great Retcon and his character reset, studying at the Yordle Academy of Science and Progress in Bandle City. Unlike her mentor, though, Rinidinger displayed no initial interest in actually taking to the fields of justice as a champion. The next month or so would see the blog further update and interact with fellow League peers, expanding on Rin's character. She was established to be cheerful and upbeat, but not by any means naive. In fact, a lot of her interactions put her in rather precarious situations with other champions. By now, you've probably noticed one of the key features that helped to give this character and her blog their identity: the artwork. Rinidinger's artist, also referred to simply as Rin, has a very distinctive but appealing anime-esque style that quickly gave life to her OC. Rin the Yordle was extremely expressive, which only served to accentuate her drawn responses to threads and questions. It's little wonder why the community took such a huge liking to the character, as well as the blog's overall style. Rin as a character would continue to steadily grow and evolve with time, but one of the biggest developments to her character was discovering her fascination with flight. See, in the pre-reboot canon, Piltover had this thing called the Festival of Flight. It was a holiday in which they put on various performances with flying machines, from stunt shows and planes to Zeppelin races. During one of these festivals, Rin would unveil her very own invention that set her apart from her mentor, a Hextech glider. A very simple machine in concept, but come on, you gotta admit the design of this thing is cool. Rin the Artist evidently agreed, as she would spend the next couple of years reworking the designs of these wings, which in turn came off as the character innovating on her own creation. Keep in mind that this was technically before Riot confirmed Corky to be a Yordle and not just a midget in a plane, so one could argue that Rin actually beat them to the punch with the character concept of a flying Yordle. Regardless of who came first, Rin definitely set herself apart once her invention reached its final stage, a pair of energy wings that hovered around and expanded from two control units at her side. These wings were specifically created by Aether, which wasn't really an established thing back in the old lore, but Runeterra pre-reboot tended to just throw around a bunch of random fantasy tropes and terms without much forethought. As such, it wasn't too far-fetched to say that some energy source called ether existed alongside mana and whatever else. Of course, when Riot started rebooting and retconning their lore from the ground up, a lot of people needed to adapt, and Rin was no exception. The reveal that Hextech was no longer a vague fusion of machine and magic, but now specifically machinery powered by Brackern souls, yeah, that was understandably a bit of a tricky situation to adapt to. This did, however, lead to some interesting potential for Ren's arc. Her love of flying had become a firmly cemented part of her character, but the realization that doing so caused harm to living entities would be a tricky moral conundrum for both the Yordle and the artist to handle. Surprisingly, Rin the Artist seemed to take rather well to this idea, though. In a way, it sort of became the central conflict for her OC's story. Another change that Rin had to adapt to, though, was the retcon that Yordles were now cryptids that hid among human societies through glamours. This was understandably a much bigger change to deal with, especially because Riot themselves have been incredibly inconsistent with how this glamour works or if it even exists at all. Ultimately, Rin the Artist chooses not to address this issue too much until or unless Riot settles on a definitive answer, and Rin the Yordle continues to interact with others as a Yordle without making too big of a deal out of it. Sadly, as the years have gone by, Rinidinger's blog has become less and less active. Rin the Artist now works as an actual full-time artist, which of course means she has less time for role-playing as a whole. In spite of that, she's still a somewhat prominent figure in the League fanbase. Rin the Artist has actually worked with Riot themselves a few times over the years, doing promotional art and streams for them, and even being invited to major events like their short-lived talk show and the live broadcast of Arcane. As of right now, though, Arcane has left the state and future of Piltover runs on, as well as their respective lores, a little uncertain. How Rin the Yordle will best fit into this new iteration has yet to be seen, but Rin the Artist seems intent on keeping the same basic fundamentals. At the end of the day, Rinidinger is an energetic, compassionate soul with a love for invention and flight. More than that, though, she's an inspirational tale, an OC that actually got big enough to be recognized by the fanbase at large. Even if she might not officially be part of the lore, I personally think that she's a fantastic addition to Runeterra. I know this video is fairly different from my usual content, but I wanted to do something a little more positive for a change and highlight a fan character that I think definitely deserves more love and attention. And hey, if you want to keep track of Rinidinger's journey, her Tumblr blog does still occasionally update. And as mentioned before, her creator streams sometimes on Twitch. Both are really fun to interact with, so why not go and check them out? Anyways, that'll be all from me for now. Until next time, stay bright.